Colors. Post. Right. Hey. Right there, we got to do the left. Hey.
Will the audience please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Scout salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Hey. Forward. Hey.
Good morning and welcome to the dedication of the Edina Veterans Memorial. I'm Richard Olson and I've had the honor to chair this committee for the last couple of years. Before I start my comments, I just wanted to call out one person. Mike Gorgon, are you here? Where's Mike? Mike is back here. Oh, over here. There's Mike, back here. Mike was the first chair of this committee and he led this effort for a number of years. And then at one point they turned it over to me. But Mike gets a lot of credit for getting this thing off the ground, so let's give him a hand. This memorial is dedicated to the American fathers, sons, mothers, and daughters who have served our country, continue to serve our country, and those that have died defending our country. Today is the day to pause and give a moment of respect to those who, regardless of race, religion, gender, or national origin, served, fought, and died on behalf of our nation. As we run around today in pursuit of Memorial Day sales and bargains, and as we prepare food to grill for the family and friend gatherings later today, it's worth remembering that American men and women continue to be embroiled in wars fought far from our shores. Their lives could be claimed. They could end up in cemeteries that get decorated next May with flowers and flags. Next year's prayers could be recited for them. Their names could be placed on this Edina Memorial. As I was preparing this welcome, I Googled the formal declaration made by the men and women sworn to defend America. Do you know it? It's worth remembering and repeating on Memorial Day. This is the soldier's oath of enlistment. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me. According to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice, so help me God. The men and women who serve and have served will always remember that oath. In return, not just today, but every day, the nation must remember what it owes to its defenders, all of them. This memorial is Edina's way of remembering all American veterans. There are some people I would like to introduce and thank for their commitment and time to make this Veterans Memorial a reality. First are the volunteers who started this project many, many years ago. When your name is called, please stand and be recognized. Mike Gorgon. Bob Benson. Frank Carterell. Jason Christensen. My logistics expert and good friend Peter Crane. Dick Crockett, the Executive Director of the Edina Community Foundation. John Curry. Lance Elliott, who put this all together. Justin Kiefer. Bob Coteen. Herbert Leffler, John Lonsberry, Robert Reed. Thank you, Bob. General Denny Schulstead, and the person who put all these names together, Marshall Schwartz. And from the city of Edina, Kristen Arsvold, back there. Ann Catra, Director of Park and Recs. John Caprios, former director. Our city manager, Scott Neal. Tom Shirley. And Tim Zimmerman, who's helping us with the planning and everything around here. This memorial would not have been constructed without their time and effort of these volunteers and city personnel, so thank you very much. It's my honor now to introduce U.S. Army Chaplain Colonel, retired Howie Krinke, who will lead us in invocation.
At least these four gentlemen were at this prayer that was dedicated in 1783 by the first president of the United States of America. We pray. Washington's earnest prayer. I now make it my earnest prayer that God would have you and the state over which you preside in his holy protection, that he would incline the hearts of the citizens to cultivate a spirit of subordination and obedience to government, to entertain a brotherly affection and love for one another, for their fellow citizens of the United States at large, and particularly for brethren who have served in the field. And finally, we would offer most graciously, be pleased to dispose us all to do justice, to love mercy, and to demean ourselves with that charity, humility, and pacific temper of mind, which were the characteristics of the divine author of our blessed religion. And without a humble imitation of whose example in these things, we can never hope to be a happy nation. And now a modern prayer. Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, we do remember your continued graces, the wonderful resources of your bountiful hand, and the great freedoms and privileges that we enjoy in this marvelous country. We thank you for the freedom of religion and faith. We are free to worship and to gather. We can gather today in safety, in harmony, in unity, and be grateful and thankful for this land filled with fields and plains, riches with fruits of prosperity and plenty. In remembering the long history of our country, we hold tight the memory of sons and daughters of this great land who served and died for our freedom. The memory of their blood spilt for our tranquility and joy will never be forgotten. They will not have shed their blood on the fields of battle without honor. For our nation today holds them in high esteem this weekend of memories. In the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Krinke. And now I'd like to welcome Mayor Hovland to the podium to say a few words and introduce our elected officials who are here today to celebrate this Veterans Memorial.
Well, good morning, everyone. We're so pleased to have you all here. I'm going to recognize a couple of elected officials from our council first. Mary Brindle back in the orchestra, back in the Sousa Band. Bob Stewart right here in the front. Kevin Staunton, I saw Kevin Staunton come in. Melissa Franzen, our state senator, stay standing. Ron Earhart, state representative. I'm going to be introducing these two guys in sequence. Keith Ellison, Representative Keith Ellison, Representative Eric Paulson. You know, it takes great courage for a soldier to risk life and limb for his country. And the group of people that Richard Olson, who led this team, introduced, recognized that. All of these folks on that committee, both veterans and non-veterans, thought about these heroes and needed to find a way to appropriately recognize the effort and the sacrifices that they made. Appreciation is a wonderful thing, said Voltaire. It makes what is excellent in others belong to us as well. So think of that excellence in others, both with respect to the soldiers that have served us, as well as this committee that served us so well in helping us construct this beautiful monument over here, as well as our elected officials from the state legislature. So let me have one more round of applause for all of them. So what has been created by this team, this group, this Veterans Memorial team? Near an ageless and wonderful creek, beneath a beautiful canopy of trees, across from one of our churches, across from another one of our beautiful parks, is really an outdoor cathedral, a center for a sanctuary for souls, both living and past. We have 32 souls from our town who lost their lives protecting our way of life, who can now end their wandering and find their peace in Edina, in this beautiful place that we have dedicated to them. And now let's not forget also those people that are serving us at the present time, these folks that are coming home from foreign wars. It's very important for us to remember that they need to be treated the way they should be treated when they come home from these great distances, representing us and helping us so much. So for those people that have passed, for the people that have served us so well in the past, that are still living, and also for all of the soldiers, all of the armed services personnel that are serving us today, let us give them a hearty round of applause and celebrate with all of us. This beautiful monument that creates in our town a physical place where we will never forget the service that they rendered to us. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to introduce Representative Keith Ellison, who represents the 5th Congressional District, and ask him to come up and say a few words for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for those very insightful words. You know, as Americans in 2015, sitting here in this beautiful city of Edina, I think it makes a lot of sense for us in the peace and tranquility and prosperity that is all around us to remind ourselves that the great fortune that so many of us have been able to experience has been paid for with the blood of people who gave everything they had for us to be in the moment that we're in right now. I can tell you that there are people who are going to churches, mosques, synagogues, temples, or not worshiping anywhere at all. That's their right. They can do that if they want to. We're assembling right here. We're exercising one of our rights in the First Amendment. We can petition our government. Anything we don't like about our government, and sometimes there's plenty to not like, we can write to our elected representatives and say, I got a problem with this. This is our right to do this. It's perfectly fine for us to do it, and we should do it. And I can list off many other rights that are guaranteed to us by the blood of the people who fought to preserve them. When we celebrate our veterans and we celebrate Memorial Day, we are not coming to pay homage to some warlord or some king. We are celebrating the people who defend the noblest rights and the highest ideals that mankind has ever known. And I hope that we take a moment to reflect on the fact that but for those brave men and women who protect our country, there are other people around the world right now who would like to see things be different for us and everybody else. But because of their courage, we can live under a constitution which guarantees us right, which allows us to choose our elected representatives, which allows us to speak our mind, and which allows us to worship as we choose and assemble as we will and read a free newspaper not dictated by the government. So today, on this great day, don't let the wonderful atmosphere around us fool you. We are here because of courage and blood and sacrifice. That is why we are here. And I just want to sit down and tell you this. I'm very proud to be here with my son, Specialist Elijah Ellison, who is a medic in this United States Army. He's here, home with us this weekend. Last time I saw him, I had to drive down to Fort Stewart, Georgia, and I think he was stuck because he's one of the guys low on the pole there, so we had to go see him. But he's home now, so we're grateful for that. God bless America, everybody, and thank you very much.
We didn't want to make the mayor have to get back up and introduce myself. So Eric Paulson, it's a pleasure to be here with my colleague Keith Ellison and be with the community, to be honest. Richard Olson and the committee that helped put this activity together, along with our state legislators, both Melissa and Ron, to do a good job, and also all the local officials in Edina that helped make this memorial possible. And I think what's so exciting about this Memorial Day is that you're actually putting the effort together with private contributors, the Edina Rotary, with other individuals that came together to make sure that this memorial happened, with the Boy Scouts that are holding the photos and pictures of those that helped serve that are going to be honored. And if you think about 32 individual soldiers who will never be forgotten, and that bravery will now be able to live on, that story of America would not even be possible, really, and not be forgotten, were it not for the men and women who made the decision to courageously serve our country, and those ideals that we actually really embrace that Congressman Ellison talked about. So if it's from Yorktown to Normandy, from Iwo Jima and beyond, our history has been defined by those Americans that made the decision to serve, understanding full well the dangers that they would face. And tragically, many of those folks never had the opportunity to return home to protect the freedoms that they helped earn for all of us. And just last week, we were served a very stark reminder, even in Nepal, when 6 Marines were killed in a helicopter accident, and they were on a rescue mission. And so while this Memorial Day is a time for many of us to come together and honor those that have given their lives, that remembrance should not just be a one-day affair. And that's why I think this memorial and memorials like it are so important, because it will stand as a physical representation of those sacrifices that have been made so that we can enjoy freedoms and liberty. In fact, last week in Washington, we had a special congressional award ceremony for the Gold Medal Congressional Award for America's Flying Aces. These are flying ace heroes who shot down or had kills of 5 airplanes or more in previous war or battles. And there are only less than 70 of these individuals still alive today. And so as these previous generations grow smaller, the question is, who will tell their story? Who will tell our children and our grandchildren about D-Day and the soldiers that fought there, and that the risks and the improbabilities that they were going to have to face? Who will tell the story about the Battle of Iwo Jima and how American soldiers had to fight for every single inch of that island? And of course, the answer to that is we will. And it's our responsibility to ensure that these stories are not forgotten, and we must ensure that all those who have served our great nation are remembered. And on this Memorial Day, we remember 32 lives in particular from Edina, of those soldiers that were taken too soon, along with tens of thousands of others Americans that gave sacrifice for the fabric of this country. That God bless all of you. God bless America. Congratulations on the final of this dedication now that came together since last September.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. And I guess it's Melissa +1. So thank you, Congressman Paulson, for your help up the stairs. But I'm very proud to be here today to be part of this very exciting moment. I remember when we did the groundbreaking in the last few months, we had an eagle roaming around. And I promise you that's not the same eagle that's in the statue right now. But I'm proud of being part of this effort. I was asked in the Senate, why does Edina need a Veterans Memorial? And the testament of that was the testimony that we had in committee, in the bonding committee, when we had Mr. Schwartz, Marshall Schwartz, who talked about a lot of the stories of the men and women, in this case men, that we are honoring today and memorializing in this dedication. And we could have gone for hours talking about all the people who served our community and our state. And it was a very proud moment for me to say, this is why we need the memorial, because Edina has been part of this effort and we want to make sure that we remember. So I'm very excited to also see the young people here today joining us, because we forget, or we don't know, or we don't remember. And I know that this day, for many of you youngsters here, you will remember that you were here on Memorial Day, erecting this great memorial, dedicating it to people that came before you who fought for this country. So thank you for the efforts of the committee. I am proud to be part of that in a very small, insignificant way, because you have done all the work. So thank you for that. I also want to say that this is my first term in office, and I certainly am very proud to represent this community. And this is why we're doing this. It's because of all of you here, because you all care, because you're all very dedicated and came together for a vision and an effort. And I'm just proud to be part of that effort. So thank you very much, and have a great Memorial Day.
Well, the rain is not here, so we can go on and not run for our umbrellas. Saturday, I was contemplating what I was going to say this morning. I was cutting my grass, and I had some happy thoughts and I had some sad thoughts. I was thinking about how I got to Korea, and it was because I was a freshman at college when they were talking about drafting a lot of us. So we all ran to some secure place like a reserve unit or the 47th National Guard. 6 months later, we were on our way. Uncle Sam fooled us again. When I returned, and I might say that I met a lot of wonderful people, and a lot of them were from Minnesota, because they were shipped over from our training spot in Alabama to Korea. And so we knew each other. We were a pretty tight bunch. And when I came back, my first term in the legislature, I was very happy to co-author the Capitol Mall Memorial for the Korean conflict. And as we moved along and we came to this spot, when I found that they were going to build this magnificent piece that you see here, assembled last Wednesday by bits and pieces, I understand, but in time, they needed some extra money. So being a member of the bonding committee and a friend with the bonding chair for 20 years, I managed to get $225,000 to complete what they needed to float this magnificent piece of art and memorial. Many of my friends did not return, or returned to be buried here. And that's when I began to get sad. As a matter of fact, I was crying by the time I got done with cutting the grass that day. You know, the Korean War is the forgotten war. You didn't hear anybody talk about that. They're talking about Iwo Jima, they're talking about World War II, but you know that there were several million service people that served in Korea. There were about 30 to 40,000, some still missing, Minnesotans that served in Korea. There were over 100,000 that were wounded. And you know what I also remembered was that when some of my friends were killed, my parents would write me that they went to the funeral. And I couldn't think of anything more sad than here's my parents and others standing there looking at that grave and thinking, is my son or my daughter going to come back like this, or are they going to come back whole? and that was sad. But then I turned happy again because I know this place was picked for the location. Is a magnificent spot. It's got the quiet water. It's contemplative. It is quiet. Maybe we can block off 50th occasionally. But it's got that running water, and it's very convenient to those who would like to pass by here and maybe say a few words for those yet to be added to that list. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor Hovland, Representative Ellison, Representative Paulson, State Senator Franzen, and Representative Earhart. I would now like to ask Edina resident Brigadier General Denny Scholstad to come to the podium to give us his thoughts on this Edina Veterans Memorial.
Would the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts who are holding the placards please come to the front? When you want something done in the military and you're a general, you go find a good sergeant and it'll be done properly. When you want to do something with the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts, you find an Eagle Scout. Kyle Nicholson is the person who coordinated all the Boy and Girl Scouts today. Thank you very much, Kyle. You know, this nation has only existed for 250 years. And we're a peace-loving nation. But unfortunately, during those 250 years, we've had about a dozen wars. And each war has been terrible. Terrible. The person fighting the war is the person who really bears the burden. And one example of those wars is World War II, 70 years ago. We've talked about the 32 people who gave their lives from Edina. 25 of those were during World War II. We were fighting for our survival. If we had lost that war, and we could have, we wouldn't be here today. It's just as simple as that. Those people saved the world. And we can never express enough gratitude to all of those people in World War II. And all of the other wars that have been fought to protect the freedoms of this great nation. We lost 500,000 people, 500,000 young Americans in World War II. In World War I, 116,000. In Korea, 36,000. In Vietnam, 58,000. The War on Terror, 5,000 and growing. And all of those people were young Americans. The 32 people from Edina who gave their lives are each represented by a Girl Scout or a Boy Scout today. Marshall Schwartz was the person who arranged, he figured out who all lived in Edina, and he has some information about each of those people on the back of the placard. Please feel free to come up to each of these scouts and ask them about the hero they represent. You see, when we think about numbers, when we think about the 1.2 million people who have died, those are numbers. When we think about the 32 from Edina, and we look at their names carved in stone, those are numbers. Those were young American people. Every one of them had a family. Every one of them had friends who mourned for them. And that's why we wanted the Boy and the Girl Scouts to be here today. Each of those are representing one of those people. And these people were young. The World War I veteran was 18 years old. He enlisted when he was 17. Not a whole lot older than some of the scouts. I was looking through the biographies of those 32 people. One went to Harvard, a couple went to Yale. Several were married. 2 of them came home, or didn't come home, to meet their new son or their new daughter, who they had never met. They all left behind wives. They all left behind parents. And we can only wonder how much they could have accomplished during their lifetime, but all they were doing was saving the world. Saving the world. So how could we ever thank the families? How could we ever thank the people who gave their lives? Well, we can remember them, which we're doing today. We can go to areas like Washington, D.C. or other communities that have monuments. And we also wonder, does this really matter? Does it really matter to the families, to the people who passed away, who gave their lives? Do they care? Would they have cared? And I can tell you absolutely they would. There's one organization called Honor Flight. They charter airplanes. They take World War II veterans and other veterans out to Washington, D.C. for the day so they can see their monument. I've been out there and watched this. They're crying. They are crying when they go up to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, to the World War II, to the Korea one. Yes, it does matter. Yes, it does matter. And it matters to their families. Last night, many of us watched on television the annual Memorial Day service from Washington, D.C. We hear the stories, we meet the people, and it just breaks our hearts. It breaks our hearts to see the sacrifices that have been made by these young men and women. And today we are remembering them. Pam and I recently visited Normandy. We went to the Omaha beach, a peaceful looking beach. We went to the American Cemetery, where there are acres and acres of thousands of Americans who gave their lives over there liberating France. And there are other cemeteries throughout Europe that are the same way. In the Netherlands, there is one with 8,301 American graves. And every one of those graves has been adopted by one family. Each family takes care of their grave. And in many cases, they have the picture, just as the Scouts do, of that hero hanging in a place of honor in their home. Those were 8,301 Americans who gave their lives liberating Holland. We can never thank them enough. When a person is sent into serious combat, oftentimes they will write a letter. It's a letter to their family. It's a just in case I don't come home letter. I'd like to read one of them to you. If you get to read this, I will have died in defense of my country and all it stands for. I would like to have lived, but since God has willed otherwise, do not grieve for me too much, dear ones. I made my choice. I volunteered in the armed forces that I might be able to help this grand nation of ours in its hour of darkness and need, the country that means more to me than life itself. If I have done that I can rest in peace, for I will have done my share to make the world a better place in which to live. Maybe when the lights go on again all over the world, free people can be happy once again. That was written by 25-year-old Captain Henry Waskow, who was killed in action December 14th, 1943. Today, as we celebrate Memorial Day, remember to thank and remember Captain Wanslow and his family and all 32 of the Edina residents who have given their lives for our freedom. God bless America.
Doesn't General Scholz do a nice job? To share with us the perspective of a family member whose relative's name is on the Edina Veterans Memorial, I am pleased to ask Bruce Johnson to come to the podium. Bruce's uncle is PFC Alfred Bernard Johnson, U.S. Army, whose name is one of the 32 names on the Edina Veterans Memorial. Bruce?
My name is Bruce Johnson, and I'm representing the family of A.B. Johnson. And over here, they're waving. They gave me a nice cheer. We have 45 members that showed from around the country. We have from California, Texas, Missouri, North Carolina, Virginia, Wisconsin, and then, of course, the great state of Minnesota. Now, A.B. Johnson, we have a family reunion every 3 years, so we get together. And we talked about this, and we all got together, gave a donation, and a lot of the people decided to come for this dedication. So it's really we do care. General, our family does care. And AB stands for my grandfather, Alfred Venus Johnson, and he had 10 kids. One passed away when she was only 9 months old, so they raised 9 to become adults. And they moved the family from the Little Falls area down to Edina in about 1936, and they rented a house on Hanson Road. And everything was going along good until December 7th, 1941, when everything changed for America. And in 1942, my uncle, A.B. Johnson, would be his initials, but it'd be Alfred Bernard Johnson. He enlisted in 1942 and went into the Army. Also, 2 other brothers of his enlisted. My dad, Kenneth Johnson, went into the Navy, and my uncle, Clifford Johnson, went into the Navy. And he had to have his parents sign for him to go in because he was still 17 years old. And he served for 18 months. Now, here with us today is 2 siblings of Bernard, my Aunt Gladys and my Uncle Dale. Now, Gladys was 16 years old when Bernard passed away. And Dale, he was just a little squirt. He was only 4 years old when Bernard passed away. Bernard, when he enlisted, went into the Army, and he was trained. And after training, he was put into the 820th Tank Destroyer Battalion. And on December of 1944, they were in the front lines in the Ardennes area. And on December 16th, the Battle of the Bulge started. On December 17th, Bernard was captured, and he was sent to a POW camp in Germany, in Berga, Germany. And that's where he spent the rest of his life, because on April 1st of 1945, he was either shot or he died of disease. When the notice came to my grandparents, it said that he died of disease. But Mr. Schwartz found that he may have been shot, either trying to escape or they just executed him. So we're not sure on exactly how he passed away, but he did on April 1st, 1945. He is buried in the cemetery that the general mentioned, of the 8,301 soldiers. That is Margraten, Netherlands. And several members of the family have had the opportunity, myself included, to go to the cemetery in Margraten, Netherlands, and see the beautiful cemetery there, and also visit the gravesite of my uncle. The family would really like to thank everybody that is involved with putting this beautiful, beautiful memorial together. And we came here yesterday to take pictures, and we went to the homesteads that my grandma and grandpa had. They had 2 houses in Edina, and it has just been really super to get our family together and come here. It means a real great deal to us that this happened. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Bruce. There are 408 donors that made cash gifts to the Edina Community Foundation and made the Edina Veterans Memorial possible. Another 13 companies made in-kind donations. David and Sandra Frauenschuh and family made one of the first and the largest individual gift to the Edina Veterans Memorial. This generous gift provided a jump start to the fundraising campaign and was instrumental in making the Edina Veterans Memorial possible. David and Sandra, thank you very much. Please join me in welcoming David to the podium and thanking the Frauenschuh family for this wonderful gift.
I'm just proud I got up here. Thanks to everyone. You know, when I look here, what I think we've also done with this is we've created community. And this is Edina. Sometimes you'll hear quoted the statement that if the dead could speak, there would be no more wars. I disagree. I think if the dead could speak, they would say, there are things worth fighting and dying for. We built this memorial not because we feel sorry for those soldiers of many generations, but to give them a voice, an ability to inspire us to make the hard, costly, and ultimately important choices in our day. And we have 2 people here who have to make that decision. I've always been inspired by Jesus' statement that we should build our house on a rock rather than sand. The rock of these 32 lives was that war, terrible as it is better than some so-called form of peace. There can be no peace with slavery, fascism, totalitarianism, or terror. I pray that ours and future generations of Minnesotans and Americans and the people of Edina can be built on such a rock of sacrifice and not the shining, shifting sand of thinking that we can just sit down with evil and talk our way to a better world. I say thank you to the men honored here, especially Keith's son right over here, who gave up their futures so we could have a better one. I hope we are listening.
Thank you again, David. Once again, I would ask Chaplain Krinke to come back to the podium for the dedication of this Veterans Memorial.
Let's give a hand to this young man. We haven't mentioned him enough. Richard, thank you. Wonderful. Great job. Memorial Day, originally called Decoration Day, is a day of remembrance for those who have died. It is not a day for those of the living. That will be again tomorrow. Today, we honor those who gave their life. Over 24 cities and towns claim to be the birthplace of Memorial Day. while Waterloo, New York was officially declared the birthplace of Memorial Day by President Lyndon Johnson in May of 1966, it's really difficult to conclusively come to the origin. But regardless of the exact day or location, Memorial Day means so much for us today as it did at the very first. Our first Declaration Day, General James Garfield made a speech at Arlington National Cemetery, and 5,000 participants decorated the graves of the 20,000 Union and Confederate soldiers buried there. It took a while for everybody to come in line with Memorial Day, especially with the divisions from the North and the South. And eventually we did when we honored all Americans who died fighting a war. And this date was chosen because there was no connection to any other field or any other day. It was to stand all on its own. Memorial Day is a reminder for you and for me that we also have a tremendous accountability and responsibility. These men and women who gave their lives and died for us in all the history of this land have done so that you and I could live the best and most noble life possible. In saving Private Ryan, the movie starts with what I think is the entire meaning of the entire movie. Private Ryan was standing at the grave of the captain, played by Tom Hanks, and asked his wife, "Honey, have I been a good person? Have I lived a wonderful life?" In other words, he was asking, was my life worth saving? The sacrifice that those men made on my behalf, did I live up to their expectations? And dear friends, that's the part for you and me that begins again tomorrow. If you are a Jewish person, be the best Jewish American citizen you can. If you are a member of the Muslim faith, be the best Muslim American citizen that you can. If you are a Christian, be the best American Christian citizen that you can. And if you're an atheist, be, for God's sakes, the best atheist you can, American citizen. Because that's what it's all about. We have this wonderful right and privilege laid out for us in the USS Dorchester, when those 4 chaplains gave their life preservers that 4 other soldiers could live. They were all different faiths. And that's the beauty of this wonderful country. So God bless you, not today. God bless you tomorrow. God bless the memory of everyone who gave their life for this country. I would like to ask if there are other family members of these 32 families to please stand. If you're in the crowd that's already standing, please step forward. Any relatives of these 32 would like for you to stand. Okay. I'm going back to another dead president, President Abraham Lincoln, November 19th, 1863. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men living and dead who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or to detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us here to be dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. And from that Gettysburg Address, now to the dedication of today's memorial. In the loving memory and with great honor of the men and women who so faithfully sacrificed their lives for the rights and freedoms of this great land, in tender remembrance of the sacrifice, grief, and hurt and suffering of their beloved families, and in honor of all veterans who have served, are serving, and will serve, we dedicate this Veterans Memorial in the friendly city of Edina, in the great state of Minnesota, in the incomparable United States of America, this Memorial Day, May 25th, 2015. The families may be seated. And finally, I think it's just, again, a time for us to congratulate all the members of this current committee and the wonderful job that they did, because this is spectacular.
Thank you, Chaplain. Scott, do you want to take us? We should probably give out a big round of applause to Scott Crosby and the First John Philip Sousa Memorial Band. They'll be playing the 4th of July like they always do. And for preparing for this wonderful dedication, I was visiting with a friend about the Edina Veterans Memorial, and he shared with me a letter that his brother Tom wrote about his namesake, Uncle Tom, his 88-year-old father's brother, a brother who was killed in 1945 during World War II. I read the letter, and I think it summarizes why we are here on this Memorial Day, paying our respects to our veterans. Please let me take a few minutes to read Tom Murray's letter, which he sent it into the Star Tribune, and it made the front page of the editorial today, too. Each day of the year in some way is a Memorial Day for me. Every time someone calls my name, I remember my namesake, Tommy Murray. In April of 1945, my father and his classmates at St. John's High School in Bancroft, Iowa, were startled by the sound of a church bell somberly ringing at the nearby Catholic church. The parish priest rang the bell at his first knowledge of the passing of one of the parishioners. One bell for every year of that person's life. On that day, the bell rang 20 times, and though he hadn't been officially notified, my father and all his classmates knew that his brother, Tommy, had been killed in the war. Uncle Tommy, for whom I am named, wrote to my father in February 1945 not to drink, smoke, or join the Army. I've seen all the world I want to see and would settle for any Iowa, any old time. He wrote that last time. The rest of the letter was filled with pleasantries of life at the time in the Philippines. Soldiers had been ordered not to share the grim reality of war for fear of upsetting their families. 2 months later, he was shot to death in an ambush as he was following a tank unit through a narrow pass in Luzon en route to Bajau in the Philippines. They called him a hero, but the reaction of Bancroft, the garden spot of Iowa, a town of 1,200, was actually described by Harold Clark, the editor of the Bancroft Register, who wrote a poem entitled Tommy. Don't say a world moved, a nation rose on Tommy's death. Just say he smiles no more, and he is cold as winter's breath. He is no more. Though he was youth, his story ends. He did the things he must for home and friends. Don't say he gave his life or sought the light of some ideal. At 20, men don't wish to give a thing so real. Just say his life was snatched before the start, because the world said, do your duty, bear your heart, and that is all. Don't prate of mock heroics. Only briefly say he did the things he had to do. He fought that day to live. He lost a game he'd hoped to win, because conventions say you fight or sin, and that is all. Won't say we're proud he died for this our cause, or that there's compensation and applause from fellow men. Just say we love him now as then, and pray youth won't be sacrificed again. The amazing thing about this story is that Uncle Tommy was exempt from the draft for severe juvenile arthritis, but he insisted on joining the Army. Upon enlistment, he chose one of the most dangerous positions in the war, operation of a man-portable flamethrower. We owe a great deal to our veterans, and this memorial allows us a place to remember and in some small way show our appreciation for their sacrifices. Thank you again to our speakers, the many donors, all of you for coming out today to dedicate this wonderful Edina Veterans Memorial.